is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Well, you're in the news again, aren't you? In fact, you find it very difficult to stay away, whether it's North Korea or the horrors that broke out in Charlottesville, Virginia over the course of the weekend. Little bit of background. General Robert E. Lee, who was, funny enough, a friend of Abraham Lincoln's, and yet, when it came to the Civil War, felt he had to side with the South because he was a Virginian. And indeed, any of you that have ever seen or been to Arlington, that incredible national monument there with hundreds of acres of graves going from the Civil War until today, will know that the house at the top of the hill, and of course JFK's buried there and everything else, was in fact General Robert Lee's house. As part of historical revisionism, the town council in Charlottesville, the city council rather, Democrat-controlled, have decided to rename a park to take Lee's name off it and to remove a statue of that great Civil War general because, it is said, he fought on the side of slavery, and therefore that image needs to be got rid of. For some reason, and we'll explore this later in the programme, because I think it's a huge mistake, but for some reason, the extreme right, far right, supremacists, neo-Nazis have decided to stand up and protest on this issue. I have to say it was quite shocking to see the sheer number of people in modern-day 21st century America, raising their right arms to the sky in Nazi-style salutes. That then led to a huge counter-protest. As you know, a car was driven into the crowd, somebody was killed, 20 were injured, a police helicopter had an accident and 2 troopers were killed, and they were really very ugly, nasty, violent scenes. Trump got up at the weekend and condemned the violence that was taking place from both sides. But that wasn't good enough for his critics and for his opponents, and they wanted him to specifically single out the Ku Klux Klan and others. And here is what Trump said a couple of hours ago.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
Now, Trump has said that. His wife Melania has said much the same thing. So is Ivanka Trump. And indeed, Vice President Mike Pence today came out in the strongest possible terms. And yet, none of this appears to be good enough for Trump's critics. In fact, it doesn't matter what he says. They will always condemn and criticise anything this president does and attempt to link him directly to the KKK and those far-right groups. In my view, it doesn't really matter what Trump says or does. They will always try and point the finger of blame at him. So, the critics are saying that the campaign themes that Trump fought on during that election campaign, namely tackling Islamic terrorism and dealing properly with immigration, has led directly to a rise in racist violence. Is that fair comment or simply an outrageous slur? And if you believe that the critics of Trump are right and that he's actually given oxygen to these people, then call me on 0345 6060 973. Or if you, like me, think he'd get blamed no matter what he said or did, then text at 84850. And I'm particularly keen to get a USA perspective. If you're there in Charlottesville or anywhere in the States, please, using the hashtag Farage and LBC, tweet at LBC, give us your thoughts and your views. And as ever, of course, you can watch me live on Facebook here in London from LBC's studios. And our first caller is from the Commonwealth of Virginia in North America. Jack, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Where are you from in Virginia, Jack?
Well, I was born in Charlottesville, actually, and I live nearby. I commute there to go to school.
Right. And how do you see, obviously what happened, the behaviour in Charlottesville, all of that was pretty indefensible stuff in every way. But is it right? Is it right that people say that the president has actually given oxygen and encouraged these far-right racist and indeed neo-Nazi groups?
I don't think that's particularly fair. These people have always been around, and there's been a rise in general in the U.S. and the West in general over the last couple of years. So not really.
Right. So the argument is that in the southern states particularly, that the Ku Klux Klan have always been around. But so you're arguing that Trump has not encouraged these people in any way at all. Is that what you're saying, Jack?
Yeah, I think he should have. I think he should have condemned them earlier, but I don't think he's encouraging it.
No, well, what he did, of course, on Saturday was to condemn violence on both sides. So, Jack, there are people like you that think, yeah, OK, it would have been better just outright to knock this, on the head immediately. But, Jack, as someone living in Virginia, I mean, do you see a rise in racial tensions, or is it more that the modern-day battle in America isn't black v white, it's actually left v right?
I'm not really sure. With this in particular, it's just the extremists, I think, because Antifa and the white supremacists showed up and wreaked havoc on the town.
Yeah. And actually, they can both behave pretty badly. Jack from Virginia, thank you very much for your call and for your perspective. So Jack making the point that actually these extreme far-right groups have always existed in America. There has been a rise of them, as indeed there has been across much of the West. He doesn't think Trump is responsible for this. And we're staying in the USA because we do have a lot of people listen to this show from the States every single day. I have to say, I was in Chicago yesterday for the day, and I met a lot of people saying, we love your show, can we please come on LBC? Well, tonight's the night when you've got the chance to do so. So we go to Patrick in Wyoming. Good evening, Patrick.
Hello, Mr. Farage.
Good.
Yes, I'm
evening.
in Wyoming.
Yep.
Which is it's afternoon here, just.
It is.
Which is a very red state. In other words, 70% of the votes cast were cast for Trump at the election.
Yes.
However, I've spent a lot of time. I used to do a lot of horse riding, so I know a lot of ranchers, and I get the impression that a lot of them voted for him because they just couldn't vote for Hillary. They didn't like him. They didn't like his. They thought he was a bit obnoxious. But on the other hand, a lot of people here did vote for him because, they liked his message and everything else. However, when you ask about the rise, since Trump sort of started to get ahead in the polls, or, it looked like he was going to win, and ever since then, there are a number of people that drive around in pickup trucks here with the Confederate flag flying from a pole stuck in the back of their pickup.
But Patrick, that's not new, is it? That's not particularly new,
yes,
is it?
No, that never happened before. We've been here 14 years. I'd never seen it before.
Right.
So that is new. That is new. I mean, I'm living in, as I say, in Wyoming here. All the Democrats are armed. This is even the Democrats are right of centre in Wyoming.
Oh, compared to the UK, everybody is. Yes, I mean, I know. But Patrick, Patrick, he did in the campaign. He did talk about illegal immigration. He's now talking about having an Australian-style point system for future legal migration. And yes, he talked in very tough terms about Islamic terrorism and dealing with it. Is, Patrick, in your view, is taking on these subjects something that necessarily encourages bad people on the far right?
No, not those things. I don't think it was the fact that he was getting so much support, which he was not turning away from a number of right-wing extremists like. What's his name? Richard
Spencer.
I can't remember his second name.
Well,
Spencer.
yeah, Richard.
Now he comes from Whitefish, Montana, and up in Whitefish, Montana is a very kind of extreme situation up there with right-wing extremists. They've been marching in the streets up there in the past, armed. Now, you know, when you get a bunch of people turn up at a protest and they're carrying rifles, why are they carrying rifles? Peaceful protest. We're carrying rifles. We're carrying Nazi flags. I've watched it on TV and I was horrified.
Yeah, so it was. Oh, Patrick.
Absolutely horrified.
Patrick, I made the same comment on Twitter that I thought it was unbelievable in 21st century America, and certainly Richard Spencer. Yeah. Richard Spencer, for those in the UK listening who've no idea who he is a very, very extreme far-right figure. And he, in fact, more than anybody, I think, was behind sparking off the protests in Charlottesville, because he visited there a few weeks ago. So I get that. Also, Patrick, I mean, just to sort of make the picture look worse in a sense, is that David Duke, the former Grand Master of the Ku Klux Klan, was standing up saying, "We love President Trump." So, Patrick, is the criticism not Trump's policies or the debate in the campaign, but you feel he should have done more to disavow these groups earlier?
Well, absolutely. I mean, right the way through the campaign, and now it's the way he speaks, and he is dividing the nation. It is the way he speaks to people. He's quite an obnoxious individual.
Well, I quite like him, Patrick.
Forget his policies. Well, I understand you do.
No, I mean, listen, I think he's... I mean, Patrick, I take the view that he's a straight-talking guy. He's a New Yorker who, as you know, living there for 14 years, often have their very own way of approaching things. I honestly, Patrick, I don't genuinely believe at all he's ever said anything to encourage these kind of people. But I do understand your point that there are these very extreme figures that have stood up and supported him in public, and maybe he should have done more to slap them down and done so earlier. Patrick from Wyoming, thank you for your call. Interesting perspective, and also, you know, he's making the point that the Confederate flag, you know, is being flown around on pickup trucks a lot more than it was a few years ago. Mind you, in this country, when I was a kid, I never saw the Cross of St George. When England play football, it's everywhere. And that can't be the fault of Brexit, can it? You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from London, and it's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt reportedly spending £44,000 to spend a penny. Yes, that's the cost of his new toilet. If this was a private company, I don't give a damn. Spend as much money as you like. If you're making the money, you can have whatever you like. But this is our money. And what is not being disputed is that this bathroom, whether it's used solely by Jeremy Hunt, whether he ordered it, whether there's a half of the team at Tour de France can get in there, it's 44,000 quid, which is ridiculous.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Hi, I'm Michael Owen, and I know what it's like to be injured. If you've been injured and it's not your fault, you need to speak to Gowing Law. Text WIN to 80800 and Gowing Law will do the rest.
Thanks, Michael. If you've been injured on the road or at work, Gowing Law could help you win thousands in compensation. We can tell you instantly what you might be owed. Find out right now and text WIN to 80800.
So win with Gowing. Text WIN to 80800.
When you need more space.
Think creatively. What could you use a log cabin for? A studio? A home office? A den for the kids? Creative Living will design and build a log cabin to suit your needs, even taking care of electricity and climate control. See for yourself at our 3 large cabin display villages in Surrey. Find out where at creativelivingcabins.co.uk.
Your own log cabin, handcrafted, the creative living way.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord
this summer.
The next generation would be justified in asking, what were you thinking?
Don't miss the film everyone's talking about.
I've just seen an inconvenient sequel. It left me quite inspired and motivated.
I want everybody to know that there is a message of hope in this.
If you haven't got the facts, you can't argue your case, so watch the movie.
From the creators of the Academy Award-winning An Inconvenient Truth.
See it. See the film. This is not going away.
An inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, in cinemas Friday. Book your tickets now.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
So these scenes of violence and even death in Charlottesville, Virginia, that we saw over the weekend, and horrific they were too. And I began to wonder, let's delve a little bit deeper into this. As I said at the top of the hour, it was about the removal of a statue after the renaming of a park to sort of expunge the image and history of General Robert E. Lee. And for some reason, he's been taken up as a great cause by the neo-Nazis, as a man they must support, and by the hardline Democrats as somebody who should be written out of history. So just a little bit more about Robert E. Lee. He writes a letter to his wife, Mary Ann Lee, on December the 27th, 1856. And he says, "In this enlightened age, there are few, I believe, but what will acknowledge that slavery as an institution is a moral and political evil in any country." Did Lee have slaves? Yes, he did. Did everybody who owned land in America and who fought on both sides of this Civil War indeed have slaves? Yes, they did. But when you delve even deeper still into Lee's record, you find that when he was away on military campaigns, the Mexican War and the Civil War, he was insistent that all the slaves on his estate were actually looked after. He even introduced education for the slaves on his estate, and he looked forward to the day when slavery was abolished. He fought for the South. He fought for the Confederates, not because he was a mortal enemy of Lincoln's. He wasn't. He was a friend of Abraham Lincoln's. He did so because he was a Virginian, and he felt that was where his heart lay, in this states' rights battle. That is what the US Civil War was really all about. So, I would say this: the neo-Nazis and the KKK are completely wrong to hold this man up as a hero, and equally, those that would tear down his statue or decry anybody that fought on the side of the Confederates in that bloody, bitter Civil War in which nearly 700,000 people got killed are wrong as well. History is what it is. The American Civil War is what it is. Indeed, I visited the First Battle of Manassas, or known as Bull Run battlefield, myself just 2 weekends ago. It is a tragic bit of American history, but any attempt to rewrite it, or for those on the hard right or hard left to pick out people like Lee as villains or heroes, is a terrible mistake, in my view. Please, if you think I'm wrong, 0345 6060 973, and perspectives welcomed from this country and from the USA. And I'm going back to that southern state of Virginia to speak to Gary. Good evening, Gary.
Good evening, Nigel. Pleasure to speak to you.
Pleasure to have you on. So, tell me, whereabouts in Virginia are you, Gary?
I am north of Charlottesville by about an hour and a half by car.
Okay.
I'm in the Shenandoah Valley, which is where many of the battles took place.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I lived in Los Angeles for many, many years and moved here in retirement and got to know some of my neighbors. And some of them have grandparents or had grandparents that remembered the war.
Yes.
So it's a very personal issue for a lot of people here. And I think that to have someone like a far left person come from another state and try to take away what they perceive as their history is very upsetting and very it's not good. I feel for them. I personally don't have any skin in this game. I mean, I grew up in the West.
Gary, Gary, I have to say to you, I myself, I'm pretty appalled at the way we're trying to rewrite history or expunge various bits of it. We had a similar row in this country about a statue of Cecil Rhodes, the founder of Rhodesia, that people wanted removed last year, and in fact that was overturned. But, Gary, however upset people are about this, does it mean that all those that think back to those times and have some sympathy for Leo the Confederates, surely it doesn't make them all neo-Nazis, does it?
Absolutely not. These are some of the best people I've ever met. Fully upstanding people, not the sort of person who would ever try to hurt anyone else. There's a vast majority of the United States that is perfectly sane, in contrast to some people's opinions, and that includes the people who voted for Trump. I was listening to one of your earlier callers who said that his neighbors voted for Trump, a lot of them, simply because they couldn't vote for the other person, and I was one of them. I voted Democrat for, something like, I think I counted them, 23 federal elections in my life.
Wow.
And couldn't do it this time just because of that person. It's not that I like Trump. I just dislike the other person so much.
And, Gary, in your opinion, has Trump done I said anyone that says to me that Trump has encouraged racism, I'm going to shout them down because I just think it's wrong. I know him and the people around him, they're not racist, and I'm very clear on that. But, Gary, in your opinion, as a Virginian living not too far away from where these horrible events have happened, do you think Trump could have done more to sort of completely distance himself from any of these people a little bit earlier?
I think he could have been clearer, but he could not have been fairer. It is fair, I think, to criticize both sides, the far left and the far right, which is what his simple little statement did. He could have been clearer. He could have explained why it is fair to criticize both sides. Yeah. And maybe even been more firm to say that both of them should not be doing this in no uncertain terms. Yeah. But I don't think he was trying to favor one side versus the other. So I think it was he should have been more detailed,
little bit clearer, a bit earlier.
But it couldn't have been more fair.
Yeah. Gary, thank you ever so much for your call. Very fair and balanced call there from Gary, who was voted Democrat 23 times, but voted for Trump last year. He is far from a right-winger, but he understands why people feel as they do about the rewriting of history. On Twitter I get, Nigel Farage attempts to suggest Trump has absolutely nothing to do with racism in the US, says Matt. Yeah, all right, sneery Matt. Say what you like, matey, but believe me, it's not what Trump wants. On text, hi Nigel, it's not just Trump. I have seen your reaction criticised because you dared to tackle the topic of immigration. These Nazis disgust me, but the left must accept they existed long before Trump will exist and long after, says Michael. Well, the call from Wyoming made very much the same point. These elements have been there in America for a very long time. Nigel, spot on as usual. It is left v right, and we are just seeing the extremes on the media, says Jane. I made the point that in America, perhaps the real division in America is now that left and right hate each other more than any other potential religious or racial groups dislike each other. Why do I get the feeling that Nigel Farage and LBC will be quite fiery tonight, says Mark? Well, I don't know about fiery. I hope it's a strong debate. I hope it's a fair and a balanced debate too. Daniel in Manchester is my next caller. Somebody from the UK. Daniel, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
Hi. So, what do you think, Daniel?
Well, I think that it doesn't help that Trump has come into the White House, and I think these supremacist groups do view Trump as someone who does sympathise with them.
Why?
And I know you're going to shout me down for that. Well, he's
No, I never, actually, Daniel, I never shout anybody down, but why do you think that?
Well, he's brought the likes of Steve Bannon into the White House, who does run that incredibly right-wing news site. And at the time of Bannon being brought into the White House, you had the likes of David Duke calling his appointment excellent and creating the ideological aspects of where they're going.
Oh, no, hang on. You know, whether you're a leader who seems to be on the right or the left, you get people that support you politically, you know, that you would never want. I had it. I had people saying, oh, isn't Nigel wonderful? You know, we've been BNP for years, but no, Nigel's our bloke now. I didn't want their support, but what can I do about it? And equally, you know, Corbyn, who appeals to the left, will have people who've got convictions for street violence and goodness knows what else supporting him. He doesn't want them either. So it's not actually Trump's fault, Daniel, that a David Duke says something like this, is it?
Well, no, but at the same time, you've got Trump's made racist statements, possibly racist statements in the past when he brought birtherism to the forefront. He was claiming for ages that Obama's birth certificate was a forgery. When he's making statements like that, that really...
Well, but that's not racism, is it?
He's questioning Barack Obama's ethnicity and whether or not he should have been in the White House. I think that certainly does...
Well, he wasn't Daniel, he wasn't questioning Obama's ethnicity. He was questioning Obama's nationality.
At the same time, isn't that a problem? Why is he doing that? Because
well, there was
of the colour of his skin.
Look, no, there was because the law is you can't be president of the USA if you were born outside of that country. That was the reason for that particular, birther theory that was going around. And look, Daniel, I know Steve Bannon. Yeah, sure, Breitbart is a controversial site that debates any issue out there, which is why now its Google rankings have absolutely gone through the roof because people want to see, proper, naked political debate. But I would not. Personally, I know Steve Bannon would never put him in the category of being a racist. I agree with you, Daniel, that some very unsavoury groups have publicly supported Trump. But I challenge you to tell me one thing Trump has said that has led directly to people wanting to be more racist.
I mean, what I would say is that his lack of saying anything for 2 or 3 days, I think that says an awful lot. I mean, you had the likes of Lindsey Graham who were coming out pretty much straight away to condemn these racists, but Trump fairly silent on it.
No, he wasn't silent. He condemned both sides. Daniel, I've got to go. Time's run out. Trump did condemn both sides. Interestingly, Justin Trudeau, the pin-up boy of the Liberals and the centre-left, said exactly the same thing as Trump on Saturday evening. He condemned both sides. I'm not hearing any criticism of him. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from London, and it's 7:30 and time for the news with Moira Alderson.
Donald Trump has described the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis and white supremacists as repugnant following violence in Virginia at the weekend. Previously, the US president had claimed many sides were involved in the clashes, but stopped short of condemning the extremists. A British cybersecurity researcher has appeared in court in the US to deny creating malicious software to steal banking information. Marcus Hutchins has previously been credited with helping to stop an attack which hit NHS computers earlier this year. Ryanair says it's airports, not airlines, which need to tackle the problem of drunken passengers. It's suggested limiting people to 2 drinks in the departure lounge to try to reduce the number of issues with inebriated travellers. LBC weather, rain turning heavier at times in the north and west of the country tonight. Some clearer skies later on, an overnight low of 15 degrees.
LBC travel. Well, let's start off in Berkshire. The M25 is queuing clockwise between junction 13 for the A30 at Staines and junction 16 for the M40 after a breakdown earlier on which saw 2 of the 4 lanes shut. All lanes are back open now though. In South London, Farrow Lane at Malden Rush, it is queuing westbound from Leatherhead Road after a collision. That's also left slight delays in patches back along the A3 from Hook. In Staffordshire, the A50 is shut eastbound between the Sideway roundabout and Stoke City Football Stadium. That's because a lorry overturned earlier on. And on Merseyside, the M62 is closed eastbound at junction Junction 4 for Rocket to recover an accident and a fuel spillage, leaving queues on all approaches to that junction. Onto the rails then, a freight train derailed this afternoon in Cambridgeshire, which has meant Greater Anglia, East Midlands trains and cross country have cancelled a lot of services, so make sure you do double check before you travel. LBC Travel, I'm Andy Lake.
This is LBC.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
Clive, Winston Wolfe. Whale music? You must be one stressed-out private landlord.
Yes, I am!
Your tenants are struggling financially and can't pay their rent. But you're with Direct Line. They'll repay any unpaid rent until your tenants are out. So drop the stress ball. It'll all be over soon. Ah, that's better.
Claim back unpaid rent after 1 month's arrears with rent guarantee. Can your insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord. Cover purchased as part of legal expenses add-on. Qualifying criteria apply. Restricted claims for existing tenants in the first 90 days when product first purchased.
Battersea, Chelsea, Elephant and Castle, Kensington, King's Cross.
So far this year, over 1,600 keen buyers have registered with My London Home, all looking for property in central London. Property just like yours.
Mayfair, Pimlico, Soho.
So if you're serious about selling, go to mylondonhome.com now to get your instant online valuation.
Victoria, Waterloo.
mylondonhome.com. Passionate about property.
If you've had a for 3 weeks or more, you should go and see your doctor. It could be a sign of lung disease, including cancer. It's probably nothing serious, but if it is, then finding it early makes it more treatable. So if you've had any sort of persistent for 3 weeks or more, don't ignore it. Tell your doctor. Be clear on cancer.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
President Trump, the Donald, is being damned for not being clear enough, early enough, some say, in his condemnation of the KKK and neo-Nazis, because he came out originally blaming bad behaviour and violence on both sides, and some taking the argument further and even saying that because he dared to talk about immigration and tackling radical extremism in his election campaign, he's actually encouraged these far-right groups to rise, and I'm taking the temperature of your views on this. I've also tried to give some historical perspective as to who General Robert E. Lee was and why I think, actually, he's the wrong person to be championed by the neo-Nazis and to be condemned by those on my left. Michael on Facebook says to me, General Lee was a liberal who stayed loyal to his state of Virginia, who went Confederate. Michael, that was the point very much that I was trying to make earlier. Now, Martin from Kent says to me, the Ku Klux Klan originally supported the USA Democrats. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'd love to know if anybody else can tell me. Other news domestically, Mogmentum, and I know this has been a very much favourite topic of so many of you, and we had Jacob Rees-Mogg as a guest on the show just a few weeks ago. So, Jacob Rees-Mogg, in the Mail on Sunday, academic Ted Mallock, somebody again we've had on this show, American Ted Mallock and a friend of Trump, says, I was at a lunch with Jacob very recently where he indicated he would like to be considered for the leadership when the time comes. Mogg insisting that that time is not now. Wittily saying that if he throws his hat in the ring, he feels it will be thrown back at him fairly quickly. But interestingly, has a big article that Mogg writes today in the Daily Telegraph where he puts forward some quite radical policy proposals saying that stamp duty should be abolished because it is a tax on moving and saying he wants to take the Conservative Party back to more traditional values. Everyone says that Mogg does not want to have a run at this now, that he really wants to wait and have a go at this later, but I'm not so sure. What do you think? I'll tell you what, listen to my interview with him. Jacob Rees-Mogg at lbc.co.uk, but just a couple of weeks ago, listened and think, is he getting ready? Mrs May is away on holiday, and the cat's away, the mice will play. Talking of which, and I don't know the content of this, but I've had some phone calls from journalists and programmes before this show started at 7, asking me on to do late night commentary. And the reason is, despite the Prime Minister being away, there is a government positioning paper on our future trade relationship from the European Union that is coming out at midnight tonight. I don't know what its contents are, but I wonder. I said a couple of weeks ago that I feared that the great Brexit betrayal may be beginning. We'll know a bit more at midnight, but I do wonder why major policy ideas with regard Brexit and our negotiation would be coming out at a time when Mrs May is on holiday. I wonder, is Philip Hammond really running this government? I have a feeling, folks, that tomorrow night's topic is going to be, is the great Brexit betrayal underway? Gosh, I hope I am wrong. I'm going to go back to Manchester for my next caller, to Lascelles. Good evening.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well. So is Trump the guilty party? Has his campaign themes led to a rise of the extreme right in the USA?
I don't think so, no. I think over the years, both sides have been increasingly vocal, both the spectrum in America. And I think it started with this idea that Trump's candidacy kind of sparked left-wing protests throughout America, mainly at places where young people were, university campuses and things like that.
Yes.
And slowly these movements, these left-wing movements, became more and more about stopping the conversation between left and right, and became more about silencing the right and stopping conservative views from spreading. But it's a retaliation of that that's caused quite...
Listen, I tell you what, you've got some interesting points to make here. The line's rotten, Lascelles. We're going to come back to you. We're going to go to Lloyd in Lewisham. Lloyd, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. So, is Trump guilty?
Yes, he is.
Is
and
he?
I'll tell you why he's guilty. When you're endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan before the election and endorsed by David Duke, and you're asked about it, and you don't disavow him immediately and say that you don't know who he is, I think that's a lie, or he's very stupid if you don't know who he is. When you don't disavow it then, when after the election, when these far-right KKK and white supremacists say how much you are their man and do not salute to you, and you don't disavow them, you are at the very best spineless, and at the worst an apologist and in agreement with them.
But if you respond, Lloyd, if you're a political leader and you respond to people like this, all you actually do is to give the whole argument the oxygen of publicity. Many, many times when I was UKIP leader, when people would say nice things about me that I didn't want, or nasty things about me that I didn't want, I'd ask myself, do I respond? Knowing that if I responded, I'd turn it into a story. And 9 times out of 10 knowing that if I completely ignored them, it would disappear as an issue. But Lloyd, I understand what you've said. Can we, Lloyd, stay with me? Let's just listen again to what Trump said this afternoon.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
Lloyd, he couldn't have been clearer, could he?
He could have been clearer. Because...
Hang on, are you saying that's not good enough?
Let me explain to you why I'm saying this.
Wow.
Please.
Go on.
When Sadiq Khan made a comment about London's not to be alarmed to see armed police, within minutes he was tweeting how mealy-mouthed he was. But yet, after this, what did he do on his own soil? You cannot justify this double standard. Either he's one way or the other, and he is either spineless for not condemning it straight away, which he normally does on Twitter for everything else and everywhere else, or is an apologist. Which one do you think he is?
I think, Lloyd, that you're one of those people who, if Trump went down and sort of grovelled on the ground and said he apologised, if ever he'd given succour to anybody, even with vaguely conservative views, let alone extreme right-wing ones, that you would still find reason to condemn him.
Giving you clear reasons why I believe his silence says more than words.
But Lloyd, I've just played you a 20-second clip of what Trump has said this afternoon, and I have this evening accepted the point of view that one or two callers have made that perhaps he should. You know, he should perhaps on Saturday have been. But Lloyd, what more can he do than he's done today? Please tell me.
I will tell you. Can I say one more thing then?
Go on.
Right? It would be like me, who has a friend who has done some disgusting things to women, and me saying, oh, well, it's all right because, he's just a bit of a lad, rather than coming out and condemning him straight away, saying, no, he's not a lad, it's disgusting behaviour. That's what I would do if one of my friends or associates bragged about doing disgusting things. Maybe you don't see it that way, but I do.
OK, Lloyd, I understand you're not a Trump fan. I don't think you ever will be. I do think, Lloyd, for you and other people, he could not have been clearer today in what he said, even if you found reason to criticise him for Saturday. But isn't it funny? No one's criticising that lovely, lovely Prime Minister Trudeau, who said exactly the same thing. Or what about Jeremy Corbyn? When it comes to Venezuela, will he condemn the government who've been shooting people in the streets? No, what did Jeremy Corbyn do? He said it was wrong, there should be violence on both sides. And that's OK. That's absolutely fine. If any world leader could look at any conflict and blame both sides and be thought to be fair and to be prudent. But when it's Donald Trump, oh no, he's wrong. Whatever he does. That's what I think. Tell me where I'm going wrong, folks. Call me on 0345 60 60 973. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from London, and it's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Ryanair is calling for a 2-drink limit after a rise in the number of drunken passengers. Is it time to clamp down on consumption of alcohol at the airport?
Clive Bull on LBC.
We asked people to put a price on their hearing. One reply said £100 trillion because I love music and languages. Another said, priceless. Who wouldn't want to hear their grandchildren laughing? We know how much you value your hearing. That's why at Boots we have interest-free monthly payment plans available to make the right hearing solution for you even more affordable. Boots, let's feel good. Subject to status, over 18s only. Terms and conditions apply.
Love your skin, love your hair, love your nails. Perfectil delivers nutritional support from within, including zinc, to help you maintain normal skin, hair and nails. Perfectil, the science of beauty, from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
Hey, you alright? Yeah, just stuck in traffic. Where are you? Heathrow. Already? I came on the Heathrow Express. It only takes 15 minutes. Can I ask you a huge favour? Let me guess. You forgot to buy sun cream? I thought I'd have time to get some at the airport. Yeah, sure. But next time you're travelling with me.
Get there sooner with Heathrow Express. Just £15 one way off peak. Offer ends 31st of August. Book now at heathrowexpress.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Landlords, Direct Line guarantees to beat other insurers' renewal premiums for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Switch to Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Save up to £180 over a year in the BT summer sale. Get unlimited BT broadband for $24.99 a month on a 12-month contract. $9.99 up front. You can add BT Sport, now free for 12 months. Don't miss out on saving up to £180 over a year. The BT summer sale ends 15th of August. Join BT today at bt.com/sale. Be there. BT.
Prices and content may change. £52.99 a month from month 13. Recontracting required. Savings versus previous prices. Paid direct debit. Terms apply.
At
At EDF Energy, we train smart, think smart, work smart and leave smart to ensure you're happy with your smart meter installation. Our smart meters provide accurate billing based on the energy you use, making meter reads and estimated bills a thing of the past. We're installing them in our customers' homes and we're in your area now. Take control of your energy. Claim your free smart meter today. Search EDF Energy Get Smart. Smart metering from EDF Energy. Works for me. Exclusions apply. For further details, search EDF Energy Get Smart.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Did Donald Trump's campaign themes of tackling Islamic terrorism, of dealing with immigration, particularly illegal immigration, in a much tougher way, and indeed his manner and the way that he speaks, has it led to a rise of extremism in America, or is that simply an outrageous slur? And Andy on Facebook says to me, Farage obviously refuses to acknowledge the part that racist ideologues like Trump and him played in creating the rise of racism and hate crime in America, and post-Brexit Britain, history will judge them. Well, Andy, I've been through a little bit of this myself, because a week before the referendum last year, there was the horrendous gunning down and murder of the young Labour MP, Joe Cox, that happened in a street in West Yorkshire. And within 48 hours of that atrocity, it was said that my campaign themes and posters had directly led to the rise of hate that had contributed to that murder. So I know exactly what Donald Trump must be feeling when people say these things about him today. Andy, all I would say to you is this, that what we've tried to do, certainly what I've tried to do through my career in politics, is to talk about real, sensible, normal issues, to get us back to a time when discussion of immigration is not shouted down or slated as being ridiculous, but is part of the normal day conversation that we have, not just in our private lives, but in our public lives, in politics as well. And I utterly reject that I've done anything other with this debate in this country than to try and return us to more normal and sensible times where border control was the right thing for a government to do. A view, Andy, by the way, that is supported by a vast majority of people in this country. Tina says, St George's flags, I mentioned them earlier, St George's flags come out for the football as it's the only time we feel safe to do it without being called racist. Well, it's true, Tina. It's not very long ago when anyone was showing a Union Jack. Oh, no, you can't do that. It means you must be voting for the National Front. Thank goodness we've smashed, I think, some of that nonsense in this country. No one's come back to me on the truth of the KKK originally supporting the Democrats. Perhaps they will. Somebody with a big historical knowledge of this in the next 10 minutes. I'm going to go down to Bournemouth and speak to Daniel. Daniel, good evening.
Good evening there, Nigel.
So has Trump... Go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to say, has Trump handled this badly over the last few days, in your view?
Yeah, utterly badly. Unfortunately, he should have stamped on this much earlier, although I can understand why he was a little bit cagey about picking on specific groups. He might as well have picked on other groups that have also been equally odious from the left. I think you touched on it earlier when you said division between left and right, rather than between black and white or any other ethnicity. And I think the issue that both Trump and yourself have faced is not that you've given succor to racists, but more that you've provided a touchstone for people who have felt marginalised in the political debate. And that includes people who are on the more extreme ends of those spectrum.
As no doubt, Daniel, has Corbyn done on the left. I mean, I do understand that argument. I mean, I would say, in my own defence, if I may, for a moment, that nobody did more to contribute towards the destruction of the British National Party than I did, by taking them head on. So I think, Daniel, if anything, I did a lot to try and smash this stuff down. But yeah, you're another one, Daniel, that thinks. I mean, has Trump got it right today, Daniel, in your view?
Oh, absolutely. It's a little bit too little, too late. But absolutely, he's named the groups. He's taken it out of the park. It's not even a conversation anymore.
Right.
You can't say that he hasn't named those particular people. The question is, will anybody on the left take any notice? As you mentioned earlier to a previous caller, there are those people that will hate Trump regardless of what he does or says. I was a Trump fan from the very beginning in one of the earlier Republican debates. against Jeb Bush, I knew immediately that he was going to be the candidate. There was no question about it. Very, very early in the campaign, he was by far the strongest candidate.
Yeah,
I think he is the right.
And Daniel, you've supported Trump, and just to be clear, you've never thought Trump to be racist in his views or his ideas.
Well, he clearly is not a racist. I mean, he may have some opinions on things which other people might consider racist because they haven't listened to what he said. They've just listened to what
what's been said. He said absolutely. Daniel, thank you, superb. I'm going to Darren in Oldham next. Darren, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Good evening. Good evening. I'm here to give you a reality check about your friend, I'm afraid, because I do believe behind the shiny smile and the golden hair is something not quite right. As Anne Widdecombe once said, something about the dark, about that man.
Well, she said that about the Conservative Party leader in this country, not about the President of the USA.
But Nigel, let's look at the reality of the situation. Several years ago, the Trump family in Brooklyn were involved in an issue where they refused to rent apartments to black people. He's insulted the Mexican race. He insulted a judge because of his ethnicity. In a 1991 book by John O'Donnell, president of a Trump hotel, he said Mr. Trump had made remarks about black people. He's insulted Mr. Obama about his origins.
That's a Darren, that's a bogus argument. That's a bogus argument. It's a bogus. Darren, that was about. Darren, that argument was about nationality, and had Obama been born in the USA, and therefore did he qualify to be president? And the Mexicans point you make. So what is it he said about Mexicans that you think is racist?
He condemned them all as murderers and drug dealers.
No, he didn't. He said some of them are really good people, but we're allowing in too many. And yes, he went on and talked about drug dealers and murderers and rapists. He said some of them are really good people. Was that just a cover?
And what about his family refusing to rent apartments?
Would you know something? He runs a huge business empire. You know, and to think that he personally is signing off renting flats in Brooklyn to any individual after looking at their credit rating is frankly ludicrous, isn't it?
No, it all stacks up that he's approved racist and sexist, and there's something about the dark about him. He might be a nice person, but that's what you think, but in reality, I don't think so. Darren, evidence is there. He's a racist.
Darren, fine, you have your view. I don't agree with you, but you have your view about Trump. Let me just ask you this. You know, he's made that statement today. Has he now gone far enough in his condemnation of these groups? Has he now, in many ways, set the record straight? Or is there simply nothing he could say, in your view, that would ever be good enough?
No. Surely you must admit that your friend on Saturday dragged his feet, and today the PR people behind him have pushed him out to make this.
So should we condemn Justin Trudeau, Darren?
Sorry?
Should we condemn Justin Trudeau for saying...
I'm talking about Trump and his racism.
Oh, right. And do you condemn Corbyn for saying there's equal blame on both sides in Venezuela?
That was a totally different situation. I'm looking at what Trump's saying. Trump was dragging his feet, and he's got approved racist past.
So it's
just face the reality of it.
So you're obsessively against him, aren't you?
Absolutely. I think he's an American disaster.
All right.
Remember, Nigel, the majority of Americans, person by person, did not vote for this man. He's turned the White House into a circus. He's a huge racist, sexist clown.
Well, Darren, I tell you what, let it never be said that this show is not one that does not believe, as Americans do, in their First Amendment rights over there to free speech. We do here on LBC and on this show. And Darren, I disagree very profoundly with what you've said, but you know what? I have let you say it. George from Newton Ards in Northern Ireland is my final caller this evening. George, hello.
Hello, Nigel. Look, I agree with what you said earlier about Trump, and he sort of way backed both sides. But I think myself that he chickened out. He actually should have backed the right wing. The left wing is out of control worldwide. Rupert Murdoch and all his cronies, and their false and fake news, and they need to be combated. He had a chance today to stand up for the people who were protecting their heritage or trying to, but he he just chickened out because he was probably advised to do so.
Right, so he should have stuck to his guns, in your view, George?
Yes, because those people had a legitimate protest, and then they were confronted by this left-wing mob of thugs.
Well,
and not one paper has actually said a word about that.
It would be reasonable to say, George, that whilst people have the right to protest, that there were elements, I mean, and obviously we're allowed to disagree with each other, but there were elements of this protest that were pretty unsavoury. I mean, people in 21st century Virginia, walking down the street with swastikas and raised right arms. Not very savoury, George, really, is it?
No, I agree, but those people are red-blooded Americans, and there's a long history about the Ku Klux Klan and all the rest of it, and I certainly don't agree with it.
Not a very proud one, though, is it?
To protest about the removal of the statue, like you mentioned also about Cecil Rhodes.
Yeah. No. People do have a right to, George, of course. Of course people, George, have a right to protest. But actually, I don't agree, George. I think Trump, doing what he's done today, he could not be clearer about what his position is. The same goes for Pence, and the same goes actually for the rest of the Trump family and regime. Listen, it's been a pretty fiery debate. My final thoughts on this are that, yes, I was as shocked as anybody to see those scenes in Charlottesville, but for goodness sake, let's not rewrite history. That leads to bad things happening on all sides. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. Back tomorrow at 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.